This recruit is the missing piece for the Lane Kiffin offense.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we talk about CBS Sports releasing their best case and worst case scenario for the 2025 Ole Miss season, which perfectly captures the definition of high ceiling, low floor. We also dive into the top 5 most important safeties, a very tough group to rank, but it is full of potential difference makers just the same. But first, we kick things off by looking at what would be the missing piece who just visited Oxford and now has Ole Miss in his finalists. We break down what type of player he is and why the Rebels could be the perfect fit for this elite prospect. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every college and pro team is there and is ready for you. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So I think it was Billy Embody at On 3. It was 247. Basically, they talked about a recruit that just visited Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is getting that bump that you need. And when you look at this prospect, you're going to say, oh, that guy would be the perfect fit, the missing piece for this Lane Kiffin offense. Somebody that hasn't been in the offense, honestly, since Elijah Moore left. He has that type of phone booth quickness. I'm, of course, talking about Paris Melvin, the super athlete, elite player out of Cy Springs, Texas. That is the Houston area. He's a 3-star on 3, a 4-star, ranked number 120 in the country on 247. He is a 3-star on ESPN, and he's a 4-star on Rivals. He is an excellent, excellent player. And the reason I think that Ole Miss would do very well to recruit this guy is he is a Percy Harvin type player. Now, I'm not comparing him directly with Percy Harvin. That guy was an athlete all to himself. But what I mean by that is when players like this are available, they generally don't end up getting recruited by the big schools because of the rankings that are attached to him. And they end up generally at the lower schools. And he is being down. He named his top 4 of Arizona, Baylor, Houston, and Ole Miss. Ole Miss is by far the most superior school on his list so far. But what I mean when I say he is a Percy Harvin type player, it's not a talent thing. It is a fit thing. If Percy Harvin would have tried to go to Alabama, for instance, if he would have tried to end up there, they would have immediately tried to try to turn him into the next Julio Jones or whatever big receiver was coming through their pipeline. That was not, at that point, a major wide receiver hotspot in college football. Arizona, they're going to try and turn him into another outside wide receiver. Baylor, the same thing. Houston, the same thing. They're trying to build up the process of where they're coming from, and they cannot take this luxury on. They need general position players. They're not looking for somebody that you can move around and play all kinds of stuff. Lane Kiffin, on the other hand, would be absolutely perfect for this type of athlete. When you look at what's going on with him, and his highlights are really next level, he is somebody that can line up all over the field. He can return punts. He can play linebacker or defensive back. He can line up in the slot. He can line up on the outside. You put this type of player wherever he is needed. He is the true sense of the word athlete. And unless you can handle an athlete, they're going to struggle with him by trying to make him somebody that he's not. I don't think Lane Kiffin will. I think Lane Kiffin will move him all over the field. He did it with Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore played running back at Ole Miss, caught passes out of the backfield. He played in the slot. They used him in the jet sweep game. There is a very similar situation of how they used Elijah Moore to how they would use this Paris Melvin player out of Cy Springs, Texas. Whenever you look at what they did with Jerry and Ely, he returned kicks. He played in the backfield in special situations. They lined him up in the jet sweep game, a little bit of slot. Lane Kiffin is perfect for this type of player. And the quickest way for a player like this to kind of be forgotten and to not make it to the NFL draft and to not get the exposure that they need is by going to some place that needs a outside wide receiver, that is going to shoehorn this player as an outside wide receiver. And they're not going to let him do the things that make him an exceptional athlete. I like Paris Melvin. He has a chance to really break on the scene. I mean, the first 4 or 5 highlights on his huddle film is nothing but punt returns for touchdown. After that, he lines up at running back, at wide receiver, at linebacker, defensive back. This is exactly the type of player that Lane Kiffin has been looking for ever since Elijah Moore. They thought Jerry and Ely was going to be this type of player. He was not. This type of player is what takes Lane Kiffin's offense from good to elite. This offense is always going to be good. There's always going to be players like Caden Lee. There's going to be big outside targets. It's what makes matchups difficult. That is what makes this offense hard to defend. A tight end that is a good pass catcher, a receiver that can play multiple situations. I talk about positional versatility on this podcast all the time. This is a player that provides positional versatility to your team. When you look at the tight ends with a Caleb Odom that can play inside or outside, if you look at this Paris Melvin type character, if he comes to Ole Miss, you can line him up all over the place, and it doesn't matter what the personnel group you're going out in. That is not the indicator anymore of what the play call will be. It will be completely a surprise that Lane Kiffin comes up with. I really like this player. We talk about quarterbacks all the time and how they could be good. Reese Wise, who was here with Paris Melvin, don't tell me that the Austin Westlake quarterback wasn't instrumental in the recruitment of this player. Ole Miss is very entrenched in the state of Texas, whether it be Billy Glasscock or their whole personnel department going through. They are big on the state of Texas. They are big on the state of Florida, and that is how they are building their rise, whether through the transfer portal or high school ranks. This athlete is the missing piece for Ole Miss. This is the wide receiver that they recruit that changes the game in the same way that Jalen Waddle did. That group of 4 wide receivers that Lane Kiffin recruited to Alabama, they were good players. They were excellent. What made them super elite and scary was Jalen Waddle in the slot. When you look at what can happen with a player like this lining up in different situations, it can make your offense so much more dangerous. When you look at the outside wide receivers, let's say Caleb Odom or Caleb Cunningham or a Winston Watkins in the slot, you put this running back in the backfield, all of a sudden you're running 10 personnel or 0 personnel, essentially a 5-wide set with a running back because of the personnel. Percy Harvin was the player that kind of started this at Florida. It goes on by having athletes that can play all over. Again, Arizona, Baylor, Houston, and Ole Miss. That is his finalist, and I like where Ole Miss is right now, and Ole Miss is kind of surging for his signature. And honestly, Ole Miss can get the best out of this player. He's a luxury type player, but he can take Ole Miss's offense from good to elite. You just watch. If he goes to Ole Miss, he will turn into a star. Lane Kiffin will make sure of it. So that's pretty cool. You know, Ole Miss might not do official depth charts, but we're building our own. Up next, the top 5 safeties who will be the most important Rebels in 2025. Do not miss it. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, you can. Whether you're growing into your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. Listen, it's like having your own personal CFO, giving you the full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So, in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Listen, I used to dine out way too much. Monarch Money let me see exactly how much money I was spending dining out and using delivery options for food coming up every single day, it felt like. Monarch Money was able to save me hundreds of dollars in dining out alone. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for half off your first year. So Ole Miss does not do depth charts. It's going to be very, very difficult. So we have the freedom kind of to do our own most important list going into the fall. We're going to do the most important list, and then we will get to W's and L's a little bit later on after we get through with that. Today, we are hitting the safeties, and it was a difficult task to do the safeties. This is a thin group of safeties. Now, there's some talent there. They have a chance to be pretty good, but if an injury or two hits that room, it gets problematic in a hurry. You're playing likely a true freshman with an injury or two on that side of the ball. So that's just one thing to keep in mind about this safety group. And everybody likes to point at the offensive line when the running back was the actual real problem last year, but that's not the issue. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The defensive back, specifically the safety room, is going to be the most scrutinized room of every room on Ole Miss's campus. The number one most important safety of 2025 is TJ Banks. You might know TJ Banks as somebody that played cornerback last year in a reserve role. He is somebody that needs to take a massive step. They have him moved in the same position that John Saunders locked down for the last couple of years. And John Saunders was an underrated player on this Ole Miss defense. Major shoes to fill in at least two of the positions on this defense. The first one is that slot corner, is that hybrid safety, and TJ Banks is going to get the first opportunity to fill in for John Saunders. It seems like he's listed as a safety on the roster. So it's either free safety, slot corner, something like that. When you look at the players that are available, slot corner makes the most sense for TJ Banks. Against Duke, played fine, and you could see him flashing as a cornerback over and over again. But you need to replace that steady hand that was John Saunders playing that slot corner position. Without John Saunders, they lose multiple games over the last couple of years, including in 2023, the Texas A&M game where they stormed back. TJ Banks is the most important safety on the Ole Miss roster. Next up is Wydett Williams, the spring transfer out of Louisiana Monroe. Wydett had nearly 100 tackles. He's likely going to line up as the strong safety in this defense. He had a few interceptions, showed out against Auburn and Texas. This is a guy that started at Delta State. He's a Louisiana guy. Ole Miss was able to get him in the transfer portal. Wydett Williams is a massive need to hit. It can't be a situation to where you do not hit on the spring transfer portal players. You need Wydett Williams to be what you think he's going to be. If you can make it through the season and Wydett hits, the defense has a pretty good chance to be very, very good, especially with the front seven on this Ole Miss team. I've talked about them pretty consistently over the last week. Wydett Williams playing strong safety, playing in that position to come down against the run is going to be a massive, massive thing. Again, started at D2 Delta State, transferred to Louisiana Monroe. 100 tackles, 4 interceptions. This is a guy that made play after play for the Louisiana Monroe Warhawks. Now he steps up into the SEC, and Ole Miss needs him to be that guy. Sometimes you hit on those G5 players moving up. John Saunders was good at Ole Miss as a safety almost instantly whenever he transferred from Miami of Ohio. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a struggle. You know, you have Ricky Fletcher on the outside. You have his ability to kind of shift inside as well. Another defensive back. He's not on either any of the list that I have, but he does provide a little bit of depth. Wydett Williams, if he hits, the defense has a chance to be really good, because if he hits, the secondary is going to be all right, and Ole Miss needs the secondary to be all right. The third player on the list is Sage Ryan. Listen, John Saunders was a major piece of this Ole Miss defense. The other major piece was Trey Washington. And who is going to be the free safety in this defense? I think it's going to be Sage Ryan. They're at least counting on it to be Sage Ryan. So I think your starting three at the safety position is Sage Ryan, Wydett Williams, and TJ Banks. That is your starting safeties. If they all hit, if you get it right, the athleticism's there, there's a lot that can be very good about this Ole Miss defense if they hit. If they don't, it gets problematic in a hurry. Those players almost have to hit, or else you get really young really quick. But number 3 is Sage Ryan. Number 4, Kapina Gushikin. I'll have to figure out the pronunciation on the game. I do not know where he will end up. He is somebody that had a pick 6 against Washington State against USC. On the West Coast, he has shown out. I know Washington State fans are pretty lukewarm on him, and they like to say that he can't cover receivers. I don't know anything about that. And I don't know what is sour grapes and what is not. But Gushikin is important for multiple safety positions for this Ole Miss defense. I know he can run. I know that he can get after the quarterback. So maybe playing that hybrid role is the thing for Gushikin. I think he has a chance to be pretty good, but if he's backing up, he needs to back up multiple positions at once. Now, number 5, I named a player because anytime you list a group, I view it as a cop-out, but I am going to kind of want to cop out on what's going on with this group. I listed Keon Young. The reason I listed Keon Young is because he's from 10 minutes up the road from me in Auburndale, played football at Lakeland High School. He was an Under Armour All-American. He is somebody that is a very, very good player over the course of it. In the state playoffs going through, they tried to run a Philly special on Keon Young. He covered it, knocked the ball down. Lakeland ended up winning the game and advancing to the state championship. Keon Young is a really, really good player. Under Armour All-American, the whole 9 yards. But there are 3 safeties that could just as easily be in this number 5 position. That's the reason I'm kind of copping out on this. Cortez Thomas from Holmes County in Mississippi. He was at the Under Armour All-American game. He was lining people up. You want to talk about somebody that looked like he knew what he was doing? That is what he did. And also Ladarian Clardy, the defensive back out of the Pensacola area, I believe, in Florida. 3 extremely athletic freshman safeties. But the key word is freshman. And freshmen being on this list at number 5 should scare the heck out of absolutely everybody. An injury here or there, and all of a sudden you need these guys. You need somebody to step up, or else you have a hole. The starting 3 is 1 through 3, in my opinion. TJ Banks, Sage Ryan, and Whiteout Williams. They're probably going to start. After that, it gets interesting. It gets thin really, really quickly. And if something goes wrong with this football season, it is likely because of the safety room. It could be very good, though, as well. Ole Miss has to make it through fall camp. We'll have Michael Katz there, Sam Hutchins, Dalen Flowers. They're all going to be at practice. You're going to get the perspective of people at practice during the fall workouts. But the question becomes the safety position. The front 7 is going to be good. The D-line, the linebackers, you're going to have good players there. Honestly, you're going to likely have pretty good cornerbacks. I'm not necessarily worried about the cornerback position. The safeties scare the heck out of me. And that is the position, in my opinion, that Ole Miss fans need to look out for. We'll see how it goes. In our final segment, CBS laid out the best and worst case scenario for Ole Miss, and ceiling and floor could not be more different. It's hilarious, and we're breaking it all down next. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra and Cialis, and maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette. Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast in under 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options have not worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. I love that it's completely online. Rougiette connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your front door. Head to rougiette.com/lockedoncollege, all one word, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with a prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for more full safety information. So CBS released their best case and worst case scenario on their website, cbssports.com, and it was kind of hilarious. It was one of those things. Ole Miss is going to win all their games, or they could lose some. It was kind of funny, but the difference between the best case and the worst case. They think that Ole Miss is going to a bowl game. In fact, looking at it, they've got the best case at 11-1. I'm assuming the 1 is the away game at Georgia, but it could be the away game at Oklahoma. The Rebels leave home only once prior to a game between the Hedges against the Georgia Bulldogs in Week 8. Not to dwell on the past, but last year's loaded roster would likely mop the floor with this schedule, with most of the Rebels' season-defining games coming at home. That's great news for the starting quarterback, Austin Simmons, as long as he is as advertised and the pieces around him gathered from the transfer market are immediate fits. So 11-1 is the best case scenario for Ole Miss. The worst case scenario is 6-6 with a 3-5 record. Unless Ole Miss suffers stunning losses to Kentucky, Arkansas, and Tulane in September, this team is going bowling on schedule favorability alone. After visiting Georgia and Oklahoma in the middle of the season, and the only other road game being at Mississippi State on November 28, anything can happen in the Egg Bowl, but the Rebels have won 4 of the last 5 in the rivalry series. and on the road in Starkville. The only time recently that Ole Miss has lost in Starkville is 2019, the piss and the miss game, to where you got Lane Kiffin out of that. So it's really interesting to look at the best case and the worst case. It's kind of a joke. It's like, well, you might win all the games or you might lose a bunch of games, and the ceiling and the floor is very, very different for where this team could go. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Ole Miss has so many new pieces in place. Listen, they have talent all over the field. I think we saw Pick Six previews talking about how Ole Miss is one of 5 or 6 programs that have been ranked in the top 25 in the transfer portal and in high school recruiting the last 3 years. There is a lot of talent on this roster. It's just unproven. And we'll see exactly how it goes. The best case scenario, I can see that. I think that the Oklahoma game on the road is going to be very tough for Ole Miss. I think that Ole Miss likely needs to go 4-2 in their toss-up games. You can lose 2 games of LSU, Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida, South Carolina, and I think that's about it. You need to go 3-2 in those games and win the rest of the games. There is no margin for error for teams outside of that list. None whatsoever. You have to beat Kentucky on the road. You have to beat Arkansas. You have to beat Mississippi State on the road. You have to beat Washington State and Tulane and all of the minnows that might be on the schedule. There is no margin for error for this Ole Miss team. If you want to make the playoffs, and you do, if you want to look at it, the computers love this Ole Miss team. Doesn't matter the computer, they love this Ole Miss team. But lose a game like they did a year ago, that inexplicable loss to Kentucky, that inexplicable loss to Florida, that analytics basically took away 2 games from Ole Miss. Last year's roster for Ole Miss, the story to me isn't that they didn't make the playoffs. That was a 12-0 roster. You saw that against the Georgia Bulldogs. When you play a team straight up, don't do the analytical stuff. Do not play like you're behind. Take the points when they're available. Nobody was beating this Ole Miss team. The only way that Ole Miss can lose is by beating themselves. That's the way 2024 was. And Ole Miss beat themselves 3 times. LSU didn't lead the game until the last play in overtime. And against Florida, in the third quarter of that game, they had like 11 yards of offense. That was just a bad game for Jackson Dart. We always talk about that. Florida has athletes on their defense. They have 30 million people in the state of Florida. There's no reason for the University of Florida to not be very, very good. And against Kentucky, there was a fumble inside the red zone. There was a couple of go-for-its, which I do not understand going for it as much as they did inside the 20-yard line whenever running the ball was as much of a problem as it was. I don't understand that. That is the reason that you should be concerned potentially. I like this running back room. I like this offensive line. Again, we'll have people at practice talking about that, but that explains why CBS is so high and so low. There's talent all over the place on this Ole Miss team, but you haven't seen them. And if it doesn't work out, they could fall back down. That's the reason the floor is as low as it is, especially when it comes to the human element. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we are the front door of Ole Miss. I want to thank Coach Yo for coming on the show last night. We've had Coach Beard and Coach Yo. We're kind of on a heater right now, so we'll see who's next week. Hint, he's already booked. Your support means the world to us. For the second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors and portal entries and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes around the college sports landscape. Find the Portal Show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.